I lost my AirPods. I have no idea where they are. In like 30 seconds, my coffee's going to be done. I'm going to have to grab that, or I'm not going to make it through the podcast. I am unprepared this morning. Oh, nice. I am unprepared this morning, and I apologize.
Unfucking believable, man.
Unfucking believable, right?
How you been, buddy?
I've been good. I've been good. It has been, man, last time we talked, it has been a wild little bit. So moving into uh, kind of that head coach, really settling into the head coach position with the D1 facility I'm in Indian Land.
Hmm.
Butcher Barbell, my athlete's still doing absolutely amazing. That's still, my top priority is taking care of those athletes and running Butcher Barbell, which is always uh, it's always my favorite thing to do is to be a weightlifting coach. I think you know if people are coaching weightlifting and it's not their absolute favorite thing to be doing, I don't think they should be coaching weightlifting.
Agreed.
Um, we all know coaches who started coaching weightlifting because it was like that natural progression of like this is the next thing, so I'm going to be a weightlifting coach, and they're not fully in it as a coach. They're still kind of it's just like, oh, I don't know anything else, so I'll make money doing this. Um, and No, but I love coaching, and I think that I am very thankful for every day I get to work with my athletes. Um, it's really I can't put it in words like how happy it makes me. That said, the toll that it takes on my body, my blood pressure.
Yeah.
I left the Arnold because that was we ran into each other at the Arnold. That I left the Arnold. I was looking at my face. I was like, "Is that gray wasn't there before?" That I had more hair up here when I
Yeah.
left North Carolina. Those wrinkles weren't there before. No, it's the greatest job on the face of the earth for sure.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree. I absolutely love this. There's nothing that I would rather do. And I chose not to work in a PT clinic so I could coach full time.
Yeah.
So I agree 100%.
What
Go
which is
ahead.
wild with the amount of school that you had to do to go through to get those two letters in front of your name.
Pretty fucking wild. Yeah. Yeah. But
Um,
yeah, I honestly my journey, I was coaching, I got into CrossFit. I started in CrossFit in like 2013 and pretty quickly moved over to like weightlifting, was like, oh, that's the fun side of things and everything else kind of hurts and is unenjoyable. So then from that point, like basically I just dedicated my life to like becoming a better coach, like seeking out other like high level coaches, like educating myself. And my whole idea with PT school is like I want to do this to become a better coach, right? And so I did it. I graduated, and it's the middle of the pandemic, so it was kind of a weird situation with like trying to find a job at that time. There weren't a ton available. Um, so I was like, fuck it. I'm just gonna like start my own thing. Start doing like a cash-based PT thing out of a gym. Did that for a little while. And then I actually got some business consulting and they were helping me like design my whole business model and everything. And they're like, "What do you love to do?" And I was like, "I love to coach weightlifting." They're like, "Okay, so coach weightlifting." Right? Like if the,
yeah,
the rehab thing like isn't like I like the rehab in the context of like I'm working with a weightlifter who is dealing with like, aches or pains or whatever and like working around that. But just like kind of like the general population like rehab stuff, like I was never like super jacked up about that. So,
yeah. I wish you were closer because I would love for you to meet a guy named Mike Massey, who's my physical therapist,
mm,
and I mean, I feel like he's got a similar story, though he still loves the PT side. He loves that side. But I mean, he was a guy that came from first a powerlifting and then a bodybuilding background and then got into CrossFit all after he did the PT thing. Like he
mm,
did the physical therapy thing and then all right, I'm gonna do a bodybuilding show and then I'm gonna be a power lifter, and but he had some wild powerlifting numbers. Powerlifting was probably his best sport. I mean, you're talking about a guy who had a 600-pound deadlift and close to a 400-pound bench press, weighing 187.
Damn.
Yeah, like he was elite level on the powerlifting. But his whole as a treatment side, he loves just working with the athletes to keep them moving, and he's really good at it. So he runs a cash based PT in addition to working in a clinic setting. The clinic setting is assisting him in paying off student debt, and he only has to do that for a couple more years, and then he runs a home office in his garage gym,
Mm.
which is how I see him. But I mean, he's that dude that like I tweak my neck in the Friday session, and I'm like, "Hey, man, I know it's like 8 o'clock Friday night, but can I see you in half an hour?" And like, you needle my neck and make it so I'm not doing the Batman
Hmm.
turn. um, but like you and Mike, I feel like would have a great conversation if I ever got the two of you together.
Yeah, we
I'll,
should connect. Maybe I should chat
I'll
with him.
yeah, I'll have to make a note and get you two connected up. But just that idea of like working in a rehab setting solely to further the coaching of a weightlifting, or coaching for him, coaching of strength sports, for you,
Mm.
coaching of weightlifting. Um, I think he relates very much to that. And I mean, it's a similar story to why I went back to school
Mm.
and got my master's degree like that. And well, not just that, but got my undergrad and my master's degree. Um, I wanted to be a better weightlifting coach. Like
Yeah.
I love strength and conditioning stuff. Like don't get me wrong, but if somebody told me tomorrow that I had to choose it's weightlifting.
Hmm.
It's like not even a short thought. It's not
Yeah.
like it's like, oh well, give up this S&C stuff and go coach weightlifters again, and
Yeah.
live out of my truck with my two dogs, and I'll make it work.
Yeah, it's always great talking to other coaches where it's like this is your thing, right? This is your full-time gig, because like um I feel like that's you see it a lot with like strength sports coaching where people just are like, "Oh yeah, like I'll start coaching on the side or whatever to like pick up some like extra money," which is fine. But when this is like your thing, like you and I, like we've kind of like committed our lives to this.
Yeah,
I feel like it's really cool to see that. And see like the interaction and how you do with your athletes.
there's man, Greg, I think I brought it up last time we were on the podcast, but there was that post by Greg about the emotional investment of being a weightlifting coach, or
Mm,
I think he addressed it as a coach in general, but I think particularly a weightlifting coach. Um, but there is where most athletes, most people, even most coaches won't understand the true emotional investment, the true um, burden that we place on ourselves for our athletes to do well. Uh, because and again, I think we may have mentioned this last time. When the athletes do well, the way we act and the way that most, in my opinion, no, good weightlifting coaches act is, hey, that's on you. Like
right.
I don't get credit for you doing well. Uh, but that athlete has a bad day. They don't make their list, or they bomb out, or they don't hit the qualifying total, whatever it is. That's on me.
Hmm.
And uh, there have been meets where I've taken 15 athletes to, and they've all done they've all had a great day, but one of them had a really bad day. I'm not sleeping for like a month. Like
Yeah.
that's gonna haunt me. That's gonna be with me. I'm gonna question every call I made. I mean, I do that with athletes that had a good day.
Hmm.
Um, Olga had one of the best days at the Arnold. She won gold in her age and weight category, which I mean, you can't have a much better day than winning.
Hmm.
Um, but she missed her last clean and jerk, and
Hmm.
I'm like that miss haunted me for like a week. I'm like, all right, did I make the wrong call? Should I have done a lower jump? Should I have done a heavier jump? And she had more respect for the bar. Could it have been that I gave her that I should have given her a cue before she like that type of stuff. Uh,
Hmm.
and you see that emotional burden um, from coaches, like the coaches who bear that burden,
Hmm.
and versus the ones who don't, because we look old. We age rapidly.
Yeah.
Um, but uh, and I know you're in the same boat, which also pisses me off because you still look like you're in your 20s, and that makes me a little upset sometimes. Um,
Don't know what to tell you, man.
no, but I think that post holds really true of, a lot of people will not understand the emotional investment that's necessary to be a good coach. Um, they'll get it, and they're like, don't get me wrong, there's coaches out there who don't have that emotional investment that have the knowledge to be phenomenal coaches. you know, but
Mm-hmm.
you only have one side of the coin if your entire coaching is based around your own knowledge
Yep.
or the knowledge that you're gaining. If you're not making that connection, that emotional connection to your athlete, like um I just had one athlete got into nursing school, and I know that because that's in her personal life. So I sent her a congratulations. Another athlete's getting ready to graduate, and she's stressing over boards, and we're talking about how that's going to affect her program and her competition season. We have uh, I've got athletes that have been struggling with balancing life, and have been very concerned about the direction of the country, and guiding them through that and helping them, like, hey, you've got to live with what's within your control and what's not. Right now this isn't in your control, but your session is. And um, so we're working on that. And a lot of coaches will just be like, hey, just it's weightlifting time, just move on, just leave that at the door, just move on, instead of wanting to create the emotional investment in the athlete to be like, all right, well, let's work through that shit because you're going to drag that shit into the gym, and
Yeah.
that's going to fuck your session up. And like, I feel this isn't just a weightlifting coach thing. I think this is an all sports coach thing. But because of the mental focus required to do the lifts well, it's not it. You can just lift on raw emotion when it's powerlifting for the most part. But the technical demand and the way that your body responds when it has to move heavy and fast, um, that is affected a lot by the mental burden that you bring in, the mental and emotional burden that you're bringing into the gym. And I think that there's coaches out there that aren't addressing that with their
Mhm.
athletes and aren't establishing that relationship with their athletes to be able to, hey, you just broke up with your boyfriend. What's going on? Let's modify our plan for today, and talking that athlete through, like, hey, today might not be the big Friday that you want because, you know, uh, your mom got into a car crash last night. Let's get through something so you can feel like you've got a victory for the day in the
Yep.
weight room, and then what can I do to help you out on this stuff that's happening in your personal life? And there's that, like I said, that's that burden that um, I think a lot of coaches don't meet head on uh, the way that they should. And if they ever figure it out, I mean, there are coaches out there that are way smarter than me. I'm an idiot. Um, and if those coaches ever figure out that emotional system, that emotional connection to their athletes, I mean, good night. Like, they're going to produce champions.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just actually, um, I've been creating these like educational videos for my athletes on like different topics. And I literally just covered, kind of like what you're talking about, where how do you maximize like focus and intent in the gym? And it's talking about like a lot of those, like, how the lifts are so sensitive to like a lot of that, a lot of the life stresses and like emotional stuff that you're talking about, and like different strategies of like how to set that stuff aside, how to focus on being intentional, and like getting the most out of your training. And it's really interesting. Like, you find yourself being, as a coach, being like a therapist in a way, right? And because you think like early on, when you become a coach, you're like, oh yeah, I basically just need to learn how to program and I need to learn technique. And then like that is coaching. And then you get into it and you start to realize, there's this whole other set of skills that you have to have. So talk more about that. How do you have you put in work to like developing kind of like the soft skills, like the
Oh,
interpersonal skills and like managing, emotions and stress and like all that stuff?
um, yeah, and for me, it was really hard work. I lifted more with intensity than intent, so
Mm,
I didn't have like coming from the martial arts background that I had, the doing Muay Thai and fighting Muay Thai for a long time, and then coming in through CrossFit, and then coming into weightlifting, and that being that path for me athletically. When I was competing as a weightlifter, it was it was intensity more than intent, and part of that lended it to the style that I had. I got away with a little bit less technique and a little bit more rage. So, um, I had to figure out like, hey, there's people that can't just lift off anger, and it
hmm
took me a little bit longer to figure that out. The other big piece of that for me was, and again, I can only speak on my journey through this. Um, was very much recognizing that like I had athletes leave me not because of my hard skills, not because of the coaching, the technique, or when I say coaching, the technique coaching and um, the program. Those were at the time, and I'll get into my ego around how to learning better programming later. But at the time, those were pretty well good. They were working for the athletes. It was athletes were leaving because of the interpersonal skills and my inability to effectively resolve, I don't want to say conflict, but maybe disagreements on topics
hmm
that weren't gym related. Um, and I felt one of the big, there were times where like I would have like three or four athletes leave at once, and that's always really hard. And it was
hmm
solely based on like the fact that like I'm either not connecting with them the way they needed me to connect with them, or the way that I was connecting with them, or the way that I would, because it's no secret that like I a lot of coaches will use kind of some savage humor or some darker humor with their athletes. Well, not every athlete's going to respond to that, and a lot of coaches that just be like, well, you're either going to respond to this way of me coaching, to this way of me presenting information, giving you instruction, or you're just going to find another coach. Um, for me, that wasn't a good enough answer. It's like, oh, I'm just not the coach match for you. Which I still have those options, but like I wanted to be like, okay, how many people can I adapt myself to help?
hmm
And that became a big part of the journey for me. A big guiding principle was Brett Bartholomew's book, Conscious Coaching: The Art of Creating Buy-in. Um, I think I've read that book 7 times. And not that it's the Bible, not that it's the end all be all, but um, it kind of went back to this like you have to create a buy-in from your athlete, and it isn't just on a I am presenting you the information that's going to make you a better athlete. It's on a I give a shit about making you a better athlete.
hmm
Like it's not just you're not being a better athlete because I want to say I made you a better athlete. I'm trying to make you a better athlete because I see the way that you look when you create a successful day on a platform.
hmm
Um, the I want that feeling of standing next to the platform and watching my athlete do something really cool. Like that's a
hmm
really cool moment for me. But everything that leads up to that is, there's the hard skills, the technique, and the coaching, and then there's the buy-in. The how am I? Why am I caring about this athlete doing so well?
hmm
You know, it's not because they're wearing my shirt. It's because I've developed and done everything I can to try and learn my way through this athlete's journey to be a coach and a friend to them, uh, to create a connection with them. So when they lift really well, I get to celebrate with them. But when they don't do well, it's why I don't sleep for a month and a half. Like I,
Mm.
there's just been this long journey of that connection. Brett's book was a big part of it. Me going through kind of my own journey of understanding and managing emotions myself, which for many years I would just say I don't fucking have emotions other than anger. It's like lift the weight and then sleep. Um,
Mm.
so learning and speaking and going into that, like it's not what you say, it's how you say it type of thing.
Mm.
It's learning tone. It's finding new tools. One of the best tools I ever did was go from a texting based video review process to a voiceover video review process so athletes could understand tone.
Mm.
And then I'm listening back to these videos before I send them to athletes. So I'm listening to my own tone and I'm like, ooh, if I said that, if somebody said that to me, I'd have fucking problems, right?
Yeah.
That wouldn't be good. So learning to uh, place myself in those athletes' shoes when I'm saying something to those athletes, uh, understanding that like, hey, there are athletes that I could be a little bit savage with and be, I can make the jokes with. And then there are athletes that I absolutely fucking cannot make the jokes with or on that level. And I've got to guide them through, or I've got to develop a deeper connection before I can um, drop a savage bomb on them here or there.
Hmm.
Um, and early on, I definitely didn't understand that. And I lost business and I lost relationships with athletes over that.
Mm.
And every time it would happen, I treated it as a learning process. I never blame an athlete for wanting to move on from working with me. I view it as always being a learning process. And some of the athletes moved on because like, hey, I'm done with this weightlifting thing. It's time for a new chapter of life and whatever. And even those I take really personally because I'm like, well, I've seen weightlifters do this shit till they're 80. What did I
Mm.
do that made you want to stop this sport before you're dead?
Mm.
you know? Um,
Yeah, I run into that as well. Where it's like, yeah, when someone leaves, I don't know about your experience. I mean, it sounds like you're kind of the same way, but when someone leaves, for me, I'm like, what did I do? Like, what did I do to like fuck this up? Right.
yeah,
And I always ask for
100%.
feedback at the end. I'm like, hey, like, was there anything I could have done better? Like, was there anything about the process? And pretty much like every time they're like, no, loved it. Process was great. Like, you did great. And it's like for some reason I still like to me it
Yep.
almost feels like a failure of something on my end. Like I should have done something differently. But the reality is like, people like you said, people just, they change their minds. They're like, hey, I guess this isn't for me, or like other life stuff comes up or like whatever it is. But it's hard to like, as a coach that cares and like, sees like the future and like the potential of this person, it's hard to like not take that personally.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really hard. And like, again, like you said, even when they're like, yep, everything was great, loved it, great coach, whatever. Um, that's still, those might be the hardest ones because I'm like, you care enough about me to say all this that you're not giving me the true nugget. Like that's how I
Mm.
think in my brain because my brain's all fucky. Um, so I'm like, all right, I go back and I go back through because we're not perfect. No
Mm.
one's a perfect coach. No one's a perfect friend. No one's always there. We do our best all the time, but sometimes we drop the ball or we fail at things, and that's just the human condition. So when it's like it's not you, it's me, that type of shit. Um, you you replay every conversation you've had with that person, every meet that you've coached that person through, um, to try and figure out, okay, what could I have done, or how could I have kept you in the sport? Because for me, if an athlete leaves and they're leaving and they're not going to compete anymore, or they're not going to do weightlifting anymore, um, part of that for me, part of the disappointment for me, because I love my athletes and I love the sport of weightlifting. I get disappointed because I know our sport is so small that I'm like, we lost one.
Mm-hmm.
Like one's gone, and that's a problem. And so like that hits me too. Like I feel like not only did I fail an athlete when an athlete leaves, but then I fail the sport of weightlifting because the sport just shrank by one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really hard one for me to deal with because being just a tad bit older than you, I started the weightlifting journey with CrossFit and with all that stuff a couple years ahead of you. I remember the when our weightlifting membership numbers were still under 10,000. I remember when
Mm-hmm.
we were still in the 3 to 4,000 range versus the 35, 37,000 that I think we're at now. Um, so every single member of USA weightlifting to me, like those are important numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, every single annual membership, every single meet competitor, those are really important numbers to me. So I feel like, okay, what did I screw up so bad that you wanted to leave this amazing sport that I've fallen in love with myself? Um, so yeah, I take all those personally, but I don't just take it personally and then ruminate on it. I take it
Mm-hmm.
personally and I try to figure out what can I do better now as a coach? Like where can I improve? It could
Mm-hmm.
be uh, getting one of the things I struggle with from a logistics side is getting video reviews out fast enough because
Mm-hmm.
they are time consuming, and if you get behind just a little bit, oh buddy, it's
Mm-hmm.
just a pile up in your inbox, or it's a pile up for me in the app that I use, and it's tough. It's tough. So it's like, all right, one of the things I try to do is like, hey, I've got a day every week that I'm going to crank videos out, and that's just I'm going to sit down, I'm going to crank them out. And so that's one of them. Another one is, from an emotional standpoint, it's I have a checklist on my computer. It's like a team roster, and one column is my super rudimentary accounting. One column is, hey, did they pay this month? Did I get their program out this week?
Mm-hmm.
I get their video review done this week, and then one column is a weekly check-in.
Mm-hmm.
And just creating that, like, hey, and sometimes I can't check every week, but like I try to hit, if it's people that I don't regularly text with, because I've got athletes that like I'll text with all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
We just bounce back and forth. But if they're not one of those athletes, I'm like, oh, I don't see a check mark next to their name. I haven't texted them in a week or two or three. uh, I reach out to them. And just those touch points with athletes, and usually it's the men's side. The women's side, every female on my team I talk to multiple times a week because that's just that's just how they are. They have no qualms about uh, sending me a video or texting me a video instead of putting it in the app because they're training right now and they want an answer right now. But the guys will on my team are very much suffer in silence types. So I won't hear from them for like 2 weeks. I'm like, hey man, you good? Did you die on those pause squats last week? What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I try to ping every athlete on the team pretty regularly, um, and that helps a lot. That uh, lets the athletes know that I actually care about them,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not just, hey, here's your program and go fuck off. It's no, here's what's up. Let me know what's going on. You traveling? What's going on in
Mm-hmm.
your life? I've seen you haven't thrown a video up or you haven't done anything. Like where are you at on the program?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, one thing that I've again I try to get like feedback from my athletes on like the process and everything. And so like what I do is they basically my athletes get feedback on every one of their sessions, right? So like they'll log the session, they'll put it in the app, they'll upload videos of the session to the app. And on every single session, I'm shooting back a video message where like I'm like talking to the camera. And sometimes it'll be like I've got my PVC pipe and I'll like kind of demo or like walk through something. but oftentimes it's just like me like saying, hey, like really like the way this looked. Like I want you to focus on this, whatever. Um, but I've gotten the feedback from my athletes that they really like that kind of, it's almost like a like face-to-face thing. So they can kind of like hear the intent, hear the emotion, hear like um, the message as opposed to like just shooting over a text. That's something that has appeared to work really well and that my athletes really like. And I've asked them, I was like, hey, should I just like basically like shoot over like a like text through the app? And they're like, no, 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 we really like the like, the videos that you send back. Because I think again, it allows you to like kind of allows the athletes to kind of like understand and like feel that intent. And it's just good to see like someone's face, like
Yeah.
talking to you, right? It just feels like a little bit more personal, I feel like.
Yeah, I like that. I may need to start implementing that. I like that idea a lot. For the programs for me, I'm still using. I think we talked about this last time. I'm still on the Google Docs
Hmm.
for that. But I do have an app where they put their videos in for the reviews, so that the videos don't live on my phone and they live in the app instead, which is one of the smartest freaking things I ever did.
Hmm.
Uh, but I think I may start implementing that or a version of that because I like the way that sounds. I like the understanding of that, um,
Hmm.
of pushing out a video or sending a video, because I feel like that could even take less time than writing it out or less time than just reviewing each individual video and just being like, hey, watch
Yeah.
your videos. Here's what we got going on. On snatches, you need to focus on here and here. On clean jerks,
Hmm.
you need to focus on here and here. And that was one of the things, like even giving the feedback was a big adjustment I've made over in the past 15 years of coaching
Hmm.
with the video reviews. Um, I have limited and gone into all right, the only video or the only feedback you're getting is on this issue until you fix this issue.
Hmm.
I don't care what happens after this issue in the lift until you fix this issue. Until you fix, uh, instead of banging the bar off the hip when you go to extend, until you start locking the bar into power position and you and the bar moving up together into extension. Until we get this shit, I don't
Hmm.
give a fuck about your lockout.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't say that in my video reviews, but that's the approach I've begun to take. And what it does is it narrows. I've found that it begins to narrow the athlete's focus, and that way, by narrowing their focus, they're like, okay, well, I fixed one problem, but I still have like 20 other ones,
Hmm.
and it reduces the mental and emotional burden on athletes during their sessions when they're training, and that's
Hmm.
made a really big difference on them understanding uh, what I'm trying to get them to do. They're not
Yeah.
they're not doing 90 different things.
Yeah, I've like had a similar actually like pretty recently I was like realizing that like that's almost like a limitation in um like the way I was providing feedback is I was almost like we would anytime I create a block of training, I'm like, okay, like this is the primary focus, right? Like this is technical fault number one. Like here's how we're going to approach it. And I like to kind of have metrics to like assess and reassess at the end. Like did we accomplish that or not? But I would find myself in like my videos kind of like veering off where it's like, oh yeah, like you're also, you're on your toes a little early and like you're doing this. And it's like I again kind of recently made that realization. All right, back to like, primary focus, primary goal is we fix this issue, and then like the other things will come like downstream.
Yeah,
So yeah.
and it makes it, like I said, much more palatable, more understanding, more easily understood by the athlete, or at least my athletes. Um, you know, to again always go back to that focus because same way, each programming block typically has a focus for us. Um, and we start in from like the broad stance, like I'm starting with uh broader concepts and broader focuses, 20 weeks out, 16 weeks out, 12 weeks out, I start to narrow in specifically athlete to athlete. And then 8 weeks out, very specific technical things like, hey, we need to dial this technique piece in. And then we're peaking into the meet the last 4 weeks.
Mhm.
Um, and I've heard coaches do it the other way. That's just the way that I do it. 20 weeks out, I'm not probably going to see very many technical faults because if you're 20 weeks out, you should be focusing on leg strength or pull strength or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
um, to build up your pyramid, and then you're going to start seeing technical faults rear their head the closer you get to the meet, and that's when you're like, all right, here's your specific exercise or your specific assistance exercise or your specific complex or whatever to focus on what you're fucking up, and then through their feedback, like I said, it's yep, here's feedback piece one, and then that got sorted out. Now we're moving up the chain in chronological order, and I do it in chronological order, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was giving feedback the other day where it was like it literally was just how the bar was breaking the floor, right? Bar
Mm-hmm.
was breaking, moving forward instead of moving backward,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, hey, I don't give a fuck about any of this other shit until you fix how the bar goes from on the floor or middle of your shin to uh, above the knee.
Mm-hmm.
Fix this shit first. Don't worry about nothing else. Fix this shit first. And then I'll focus. Okay, now we're talking about floor. And I'll either broaden scope and I'll go floor to power position or position one, as I call it, or
Mm-hmm.
floor to or knee to power position. But um, I like that idea too of when I provide that feedback of like, hey, this is fixed. Don't fuck this up.
Yeah.
This, now add this to it.
Yeah. And then inevitably, like you fix something, you move on, and then like the original issue gets fucked up again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it does, but at least they know how to fix it now. At least
Yeah,
they're
true.
attentive enough to be like, "Hey, yep, I didn't break the floor on that one." Um, athletes, I look for that point uh, that self-correction or self-feedback loop with athletes. I'm
Mm,
trying to train them to that. I was given a concept early on, and it's not like from a business perspective, it's probably a stupid concept, but from the actual goal of being a coach, my idea is that I want to train the athlete to not need me anymore.
hmm.
Um, and I don't feel like enough coaches do that. I feel too many coaches get strung up by the mindset of, well, if the athlete doesn't need me anymore, they're not going to pay me anymore.
Right.
Well, I mean, here's the flip. If you train one athlete to not need you anymore, you're going to have a couple other athletes banging down your door to figure out what you did.
Yep.
Um, so I constantly work for that athlete that is able to self-diagnose, self-correct, and uh, issue a correction before I even have to tell them.
Hmm.
I've only got one or two athletes, maybe three, that are at that point, but they'll be like, "Hey, I feel myself doing this, this, and this, and this workout. Okay, what do you think?" And I lead them first into, okay, what do you think the cure is for that? Do this, this, and this. And I'm like, yep, all right, here's how you phrase it, or here's how you do it, or here's what you should feel.
Hmm.
Um, so uh, that building of self-sufficiency, I think, is something that's super important. And I think that leads into what we were talking about earlier, with creating buy-in. You trust your athlete enough that they're not going to take off from you once you've taught them how to lift and self-diagnose and self uh, regulate. That they're still going to be your athlete. You're still going to be their coach. Like, you've given them all the information you possibly can,
Hmm.
and that, for what I found for a lot of athletes, is showing them that, like, okay, you're not holding anything back. You're
Hmm.
giving everything into it, and therefore I'm buying completely into you. I'm buying completely into your program, your style, um, uh, your philosophy, in you as a coach.
Yeah. And
So
the reality is like there's no secrets
no, there
in
really
weightlifting,
isn't.
right? Like the technique, it's pretty easy to learn, right? There's lots of good resources out there.
Yeah.
Like in terms of like progressing a program, right? Like a strength training program, tons of different like styles and philosophies, but like the fundamentals are like pretty simple. So it really comes down to like success is like it comes down to like those small things, right? And it comes down to like again, talking about like the relationships you have with athletes and like creating the buy-in and making sure that they have like intent. And so that's where I think a coach is is really valuable, right? Like you can find tons of great programs out there. I can send you free programs. But like the difference between like really developing and maximizing yourself as an athlete comes down to like those kind of soft skills that we talked about.
Yeah. And I think, to piggyback on that, like it's easier than ever. Like it's far easier now to be a weightlifter and find information than it was when I started, than it was probably
Hmm.
when you started. And then it was when, some of the greats that we were watching started, the American greats. It was a lot easier. It's a lot easier now than it was like when Travis Cooper started, because he started
Hmm.
back in '09. And, when Kendrick Ferris started, who started lifting in the early 2000s, or when Chad Vaughn started lifting in the early 2000s or late '90s. Like, um, the internet has done wonders for bringing information out to the masses. But the other big piece of this is, you know, I've in the past month I've taught, or past 2 months this year I've taught 4 USA weightlifting courses. The information's out there. You can freaking find this stuff.
Hmm.
And uh, where the coach's job is taking the information that you're finding, or providing you with information, and then shortening the learning curve,
Exactly. Yeah.
um, and helping you learn from the mistakes of our past. Like,
Yep.
coaches have fucked up a lot.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of misunderstanding of the lifts. And um, I used to joke that uh, CrossFit kept me employed because they kept teaching the wrong shit in weightlifting. And
Hmm.
um, whether that's true or not, because I feel like a lot of CrossFit coaches, at least like at the box level, at the bottom level, they've gone out and sought really good weightlifting information now. And if they haven't, they're trying to. Um, I give them a lot of credit for that. But the information's out there to
Hmm.
find and to learn, and we've learned from our old mistakes. You're working with a coach. I almost said you're paying a coach, but um, I do believe that if tomorrow it became illegal for us to take money for coaching weightlifting, we would do this shit for free. Um, you're working with a coach for all the other shit, for all the soft skills. You're working with the coach for the support. You're working with the coach for the understanding of not just your lifting life and your lifting career, but your personal life.
Hmm.
Um, almost everybody on the team, if they have a family, I've met their family.
Hmm.
Almost everybody on the team, um, if they have a significant other, or if they have a wife or a husband, I've met them. I've met the boyfriends. For many of them, I've been to their houses, and when I've traveled, and you know, I've met moms and dads, and uh, all this. Like, it's I was in Southern Pines this past weekend, and I was teaching a course out there, and I went out and I took one of my interns with me, who's also one of my athletes, and because I'm too old to demonstrate a lot of this stuff in the course anymore, so I need to bring a demoer with me. Um, and while I'm in Southern Pines, I texted one of my other athletes in Southern Pines. And the first thing she did was like, "Oh, well, you want to come over for dinner?" And
Hmm.
invited me and the intern, her teammate, over for dinner, and we had dinner with her, with my athlete that lives in Southern Pines, her husband and daughter, and then the mom of another one of my athletes just was there, and she came over for dinner as well. So it was like this big, like, team family gathering in Southern Pines, just on a half hour's notice. Like, you don't get that if you just, hey, I'm just going to find a weightlifting program online, or I'm just going to sign up in this Train Heroic marketplace for uh,
Hmm.
a 25 or a $30 a month program that, maybe one day I'll meet my actual coach.
Hmm.
Um, so those, there's something to be said for those relationships and those skills for sure.
Agreed. Yeah. Have you come across? I've been shocked to hear the number of people that have used AI to create programs for them.
I have not. Um, AI was just kind of becoming a thing where like uh I graduated and the class behind me was starting to get caught with AI on assignments.
Hmm.
And I was like, the fuck are you doing? Um, and then I have not heard of people using it to create programs. That terrifies me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
not in oh, it's going to take my job. I'm not worried about that.
No, yeah.
Um, but a coach that's willing to do that, to have a machine that you don't know, don't trust, or even if you were to have somebody else write a program for somebody that you were coaching or you were claiming to coach.
No, I'm saying like people out there, like athletes that like don't want to like invest in a coach or like program or whatever.
No,
We'll be like, hey, chat, make me a weightlifting program and then follow that program.
hey, sorry, dogs are barking. Hey, come here, come here, all the way over here, lummox. Um, no, I mean it's entertaining. The thought is entertaining.
Hmm.
I've not messed with any of the AI because I'm just afraid of like even finding it on my phone or computer because of Skynet and
Hmm.
Judgment Day. If you don't know those references, you need to go back and watch the uh, uh, oh, classic of the '80s, Terminator 2. Um, but yeah, I haven't messed with any of that stuff. I'd be shocked to see if the programs are actually viable.
Hmm.
Um, I would be interesting to look at it and see what AI is spitting out. But um,
Some of it's not bad. I've asked it quite a few questions about like
yeah,
weightlifting related stuff, and some of it I'm like, yeah, like some of it's like way off, but yeah, it's really interesting. It's really
I mean,
interesting to like see that.
I'm sure it's not as bad as some of the programs I've seen educated coaches write because I've seen some
True.
shit from some people where I'm like, bro, um, uh, no, no, you missed the mark. Um, I'd be interested to see it. Uh, yeah, but I think the AI thing, I think this hits what we just kind of talked about for a while is the information's out there because all it's
Hmm.
doing is in a much faster pace and with a much broader net gathering all the information that it can possibly find that's open source for weightlifting, sorting it, and then creating a program from it.
Hmm.
And I do just think that people using AI to create a weightlifting program is just highlighting the fact that the information's out there and
Hmm.
that if you want to find it, you can find it, and people are using AI to find it. But I do also think that for every athlete that's using AI to find it or AI to create the program, they would be better served looking at the source the AI pulled it from, reading, researching, learning from that source and then creating a program that would be better served for them.
Yeah.
It was interesting. We go back, your weightlifting journey and my weightlifting journey into finding the sport was very similar, where we both popped into it from CrossFit. But then it got a very big divergence where you actually had a coach in a room for a while, and I didn't.
Hmm.
I never had a coach in a room as a weightlifter. I had opportunities where like I went and I dropped into gyms or I took seminars or whatever, but it was always just me and heavy metal music in the corner of a gym or in my garage. And
Well,
uh,
that was actually me for a while too. So
yeah,
I like so got in like through CrossFit, the gym I was coaching at in Ann Arbor. There was a guy who had just moved up recently and was like coaching at the gym as well, who was like uh a weightlifter. And so he was coaching me for it was probably like a year or so when I was up at the gym. And I went and trained at 4 Star, you know,
yep,
Matt Adamczyk up in they're up in like Livonia. I go up and like train at their gym, and I went and sought out Fred Lowe, who's like up in Livonia as well. Trained with him a few times.
oh
Um,
Fred,
but then after that, then when like PT school era, like I was just like purely on my own.
Yeah.
doing my own thing. And it was only after I graduated, moved to Ann Arbor, that I went back to like training at a weightlifting gym. Or
Yeah.
sorry, Nashville, when I moved back to Nashville after PT school.
And
So
that was
anyway,
with
yeah,
uh
I
the
also had that like experience of like just fucking let's
yeah.
figure this shit out.
And that was for me, it was for you, you at least started with the coach. Like you had somebody
Mm,
starting and watching and helping you guide. And I think I really missed out on that. I
mm,
missed out on a lot of that. Like if I had to do it all over again, and part of it was like 2013 to 2011, there was still a big gap there where there weren't a lot of coaches. In
right.
2013, like every year after 2010, the number of weightlifting coaches increased, not incrementally, but exponentially.
Hmm.
Um, Everybody was looking because it was that joint event with CrossFit, right? That they
Hmm.
did in 2010, and then everybody was like, "Oh, this weightlifting thing looks cool as shit." So everybody started seeking out weightlifting coaches or trying to become one. I really regret not having a coach.
Hmm.
I had mentors, I had influences, but I didn't have an actual like coach in the room for that first year. And I think if I had at least had one for that first year, I wouldn't have made a lot of the same mistakes that I did.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that is something that's interesting, at least for uh, my coaching, in something that you're not going to get out of an AI or something that somebody's looking for from an AI or a canned program or a pre-written program or a self-written program. Um, Having that second set of eyes, even if you're writing your own program, but you're submitting it to somebody else, being like, hey, take a look at this, and make sure I'm not going to fucking die.
Right.
Um, that second set of eyes, I think, cannot be underestimated. The importance of that is absolutely huge, and the importance of having somebody to learn from is absolutely huge. And like I said, it's a big regret from a lot of my weightlifting career,
Hmm.
and something that I didn't figure out until way too fucking late.
Hmm.
Um, by the time I posted a story the other day um, about how I feel about weightlifting, and it was the longer you're in weightlifting, the more you learn about weightlifting. And then the more you learn about weightlifting, because the longer you're in it, the less your ability to do weightlifting, the less ability you have to do weightlifting, to do the movements, the less ability you have to train. So I've been in it so long that I've learned so much, but now at 37, four shoulder surgeries, two broken ankles, you know, a broken or an avulsion in my tibia and a bunch of other injuries that are super fun. Um, I don't have the ability to use all of the information I've learned about weightlifting now.
Hmm.
And that's the saddest part about weightlifting to me.
Mm, yeah.
Um, and I wish that early on I did. And for me, it was part of it was coach availability, and then part of it was ego. It's like I
Hmm.
can figure this shit out.
Hmm.
I'm a young, strong 22-year-old kid or 23-year-old kid. I can figure this shit out. I can do this. Um, yeah, I wish I didn't let that get in the way of me, because I often think like, okay, if I had somebody at that time, because I thought I knew what I was doing at the time, I fucking didn't. If I had somebody at that time, what could I have done in weightlifting? Those fun little thought experiments we do late at night after much bourbon.
Hmm.
Um, and I think again, it highlights the need for a coach, for people to seek out a coach, not just me, like seek out me or seek out you, but seek out a coach, somebody to help them through that journey
Yep.
and that process if they really want to be good at this thing, and to swallow the pride, swallow the ego, and be like, yep, I'm just going to ride the course out with this coach until I at least know enough that if I picked a bad coach, I can move on to a different coach, or I'm going to ride it out with this coach, and me and this coach are going to grow together, which has happened with me and a lot of my athletes. Is that and the longer my athletes have been with me, the more I've grown and the more I've been a better coach to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And it like the more, you know, again, there's no like secrets to programming and to weightlifting as we mentioned. But like the longer you're in it, the more experience you get, the more like pattern recognition, right? You see like, oh, this person is responding like this way to this thing, and like we can adjust these variables based on like what you're seeing and the athletes' feedback and everything. I remember when I went up to train with Fred, I was like maybe a couple years into or like a year into like weightlifting at this time, and I went up and like trained with Fred in his oh, what does he call it? The Temple of Exertion, his little basement gym up in Livonia.
I love that.
And
That's
he was
fantastic.
like running me through like the technique and stuff, and like I was like, "Can you tell me about programming?" And I wanted him to give me this simple like ABC explanation of like this is the framework for how you program, right? And I was just
I've been
shocked
looking for that for fucking 15 years. If
yeah.
you find it, you let me know.
And he's like, yeah, well, like, you can kind of like run like this squat cycle or like maybe use these variations or whatever. And he was just like super like I thought I was gonna walk out of there with like again a step-by-step process for like this is how you program. And I didn't get that. And I was like, fuck. And you just learn that like, the more that you're in this, like you learn that there is no way, right? There's different things you try, and everything we do as a coach is trial and error, right? Like, hey, let's try this, see if this works. Oh shit, it didn't. Okay. Let's adjust and do something else, right?
And it becomes less and less error as you go through with each particular athlete.
Right, right.
Because you'll start to figure out like what stuff they don't respond to, and then or for me it's a lot of movement stuff. What movements do they really struggle with?
Mm,
And I've always had to go back and forth with like, hey, this athlete, uh, I've got an athlete. I don't want to say their name because they'll strangle me. I'm scared of them. No, she struggles with the snatch high pull. It's
mm,
just that particular piece of the snatch high pull, she struggles with. And for the most part, I'll program it like once a year just for her to touch it here and there.
mm,
But I've essentially become okay with the fact that, well, the snatch high pull isn't a movement that she's going to compete in competition. And if every time we do it, I don't get a response out of it that I want, or she just gets frustrated, I can just not fucking program this exercise. Like that's you have an option after you
right.
begin to learn athletes that, well, I'm just not going to fucking program this like that. And it took me way too long to figure out that's an option instead of being like, no, the snatch high pull is an exercise that we use in weightlifting, and therefore you have to get it good at it. No,
Hmm, hmm.
no, you fucking don't. You
On the flip side though, I recently one of my athletes, I recently put in an exercise for her. So with her we need to work on like aggression in the turnover, right? That's like kind of like one of our primary focuses. And I put in she's a CrossFitter. So like her with my CrossFitters, the program is a little bit more minimal. We don't have, I don't do as many like primers and like because I'm trying to respect the fact that they're like also doing CrossFit training on top of this, right? But I put in muscle snatches and she like struggled so wildly with it. And I was like this is very, very diagnostic, right? So like
yes,
sometimes if you put in an exercise and they struggle with it so much, it can mean that like, hey, maybe they need more exposure to like this particular type of stimulus.
I can see that, and I would again. It would be piece by piece. Like the snatch high pull to me is further away from the snatch than the muscle snatch is.
Hmm.
And therefore, like I would justify like the idea of using the muscle snatch or creating more exposure to the muscle snatch than the snatch high pull itself.
Hmm.
I picked, that would be one walkthrough, but also again, just for me on that idea of like if they struggle with it so bad that it negatively impacts their lifts,
Right.
I'm not going to program it for them.
Right.
So
Or like you said, if they're getting so frustrated with it, right, then it's
yeah,
like, all right, what's the utility here if you're just getting pissed off and then like the rest of your session is, garbage as a result.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I stand on it. But the highlight there was this idea of there isn't a way.
Right.
There you don't have to trial and error it if you found really quickly an error that okay, well, this one we don't need to play with this. I can get a stimulus that's very similar if I do, because she's great at the power snatch from the power position,
Mm.
which is very similar to a high pull or the power snatch from the knee. She has a good power snatch and is a good snatcher in general, but the idea of the snatch high pull just was fucky. So it's like I can use a different exercise.
Is it like a coordination thing or like what?
It's a if you continue to program these things, I'm going to beat you in the face with a kettlebell thing. And I said, okay, message received. Um, and I think it's a bit of a coordination. It's an antithesis type of movement. She has a tendency to kind of finish up and then try to lean into the bar instead of keeping the chest up in the extension of the
Mm,
high pull. But I don't have that problem when she just does a snatch pull or a power snatch.
mm,
So it's like if I'm creating a problem through the snatch high
mm,
pull as well as frustration,
mm,
I'm getting rid of this particular exercise. But I'll do shit like that with like I'll program somebody uh split jerks with a pause in the dip,
mm,
and it is the bane of their existence. And no matter what I'm doing, I can't get them to pause and then just go up from the pause. They always pause and then
mm,
re-dip and go up. That. So for that particular athlete that has that issue, I'm just like, all right. So instead of a pause, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do a slow eccentric jerk dip, and I'm just taking the flex of the bar out.
mm,
So you have to do a 3 second down to your power position depth for your jerk, uh, with the idea, and they're doing it fairly light with the idea that we're learning because one of the flaws that I find with a lot of athletes, mine and others, is they love to over dip the jerk.
mm,
Uh, they dip themselves out of position on the jerk. So my preferred exercise for that to fix that is jerk with a pause in the bottom of the dip. Well, if
mm,
that doesn't work, I can create a jerk with a slow eccentric because I'm like, hey, at a very minimum, yes, I'm taking the flex out of the bar, which is what I'm going to do with the jerk with the pause and the dip anyway. We're going to do a 3 second down to that position. And then once you get that position, you're going to go up. But
mm.
because you're never actually stopping, you don't get to re-dip further.
Right.
Um, so same, but different.
So like I go back and forth on like pauses in the dip of the jerk because the jerk is like the amortization phase is like so
Yep.
important,
Hmm.
right? And when you're dipping, like you're taking that out and you're like drastically changing the timing of the lift. Do you feel like that like negatively impacts like timing and coordination or
It depends on how close you're doing it to competition, because
okay.
it's when I look at that movement for the jerk, because we are now taking out the amortization phase for the dip to the drive. If I would be a mistake if I were to program that, in my opinion, within like 12 weeks of a meet.
Hmm.
So, but I need to fix this issue that I'm having with over dipping or losing balance in the bottom of the dip of the jerk. So I need a movement, whether it's that or whether it's other movements such as a slow eccentric, which also gets rid of the amortization phase because you're getting, well, at least a jump stretch response phase. It's
Hmm.
lengthening the amortization phase. Um, and, but I need to fix this position, this specific issue in the jerk, is I need to
Right.
fix the bottom of the dip. And, dependent on how close to competition is what I'm going to use, um, exercise wise. So my exercise selection further out from competition, kind of general knowledge or general secret that's not really a secret because you can find it everywhere. Further away from competition, you get less sports specific. Closer to competition, you get more sports specific. Sports specific for us is a snatch, the clean, and the jerk, right? Um, so I'll use the pauses further away to fix
Hmm.
that particular problem. And then let's say if I'm building a program out that's 16 weeks long or 20 weeks long, let's say for weeks up until 12 weeks, they're going to get 8 weeks of a jerk with either a pause in the dip or a jerk where they're doing a jerk dip plus a jerk or something like
Hmm.
that, where I'm really focused in on this jerk dip. And
Hmm.
then 12 weeks and in, we're going to build some volume with the jerk, but it's just going to be the jerk. It may be power jerk, but there's no adjustment being made to the dip or the dip phase or the front end of the jerk. We may do a power jerk and a split jerk, or we may do some really heavy power jerks. And then by the time I'm 8 weeks and in, I'm sports specific movements
Hmm.
mostly.
Hmm.
I might still be doing some hang work or for the other lifts, or on the jerk we might be seeing some doubles, or we might be doing, one of the things I like a lot from 8 weeks to 4 weeks mark is a behind the neck jerk plus in front of the neck jerk.
Mm. Yeah.
I really like that complex a lot because I'm trying to match the bar path from the in front of the neck jerk to the behind the neck jerk,
Hmm.
and get as close as I can get to that. So then by the time we're 4 weeks to 2 weeks, they're still doing jerks off blocks, but it's just jerks. And then 2 weeks in, there's no jerks from blocks.
Hmm.
And that's like a rough shod way of like, hey, I'm going to walk an athlete through that can't get their fucking jerk dip right from 20 weeks to competition day. Um, and that's one option. I like the pause and the dip a lot because of
Hmm.
that. Um, to work on that for most of the athletes, the there are athletes. I like I said, I had an athlete that the pause and the dip got me the same type of death threats that snatch high pulls got me.
Hmm.
It just did not work, and it just created frustration. And I think you have to measure that frustration against their desire to do the sport. Um,
Hmm.
so there is an athlete I won't use those anymore, and I look for other issues or other exercises for that.
Hmm.
Um, but I do think it's a viable exercise despite removing the amortization phase. And again, it's every movement that's not the snatch and the clean and jerk. As soon as you break away, even
Hmm.
separating the jerk from the clean, where it's just a jerk from the blocks or just a clean without a jerk follow on, you immediately begin to weigh pros and cons of doing
Right.
it. Everything's going to have a con. Everything's going to have a downside to
Hmm.
programming it, which is why you periodize. That's the
Yeah.
whole basis of periodization. We're biasing certain things, knowing that we're letting other things go by the wayside. We're
Hmm.
biasing leg strength and doing less of the classic lifts, knowing that we're going to have technical issues to fix down the road. But I swear to fucking God, if you miss one more clean on the stand up, I'm going to beat you to death with a kettlebell. We're going to do some fucking squats. So, um, like I see your point, and
Hmm.
I understand that, and I've taken that into consideration. But the benefits of getting the athlete to do what I want them to do at the bottom of that dip
Right.
far enough away from competition allows me to do it without it affecting the technique they're going to have in a negative way. Allows it
Right.
to only affect in a positive way the technique they're going to have when they get to the competition.
Yeah. 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 And I still use it. I still program it, but like yeah, one of my athletes, I'm trying to decide whether or not I like it for them just because we've put it in before and I it just seems to affect the timing in a negative way. And so I'm not convinced that it's like a great tool for like this person specifically. But again, everything is a tool. Some people are going to respond to it, some people are not. So again, just comes back to that kind of trial and error.
Yeah, and I like how you bring up the word tool, because a lot of times, this is a big concept that when I go and I teach USA weightlifting courses, and I give people the USA weightlifting way, and then I also give them, my understanding or interpretation of the USA weightlifting way of doing things, which is pretty much the correct way, or what I would view as a lot of the correct way of doing things.
Hmm.
Um, and I say, hey, listen, what I'm giving you are tools to add to your toolbox.
Hmm.
I'm not telling you to throw out old tools. Keep what you've been using, add what I'm giving you to it, and just build a bigger toolbox.
Hmm.
So that's one thing. I think the other thing, specifically looking at the pause and dip jerk, if we're going to talk about that before we completely beat that horse to death, um, one of the things that you can do with that athlete is use you talk about prep complexes and primers. That
Hmm.
can be the primer for their piece for that day, where let's say they
Hmm.
do a jerk with a pause and dip, and then they do a regular jerk. and they're doing that only at about 50 to 55 or 60%, really, really light before we get to the point where we're actually going to get a difference in behavior of the bar. And
Hmm.
then it's like, all right, now roll into your jerk work for the day without the pause and the dip. But we were trying to do with that pause and the dip is to solidify your position at the bottom of the dip with your hips slightly back over the ankles and the knees over the toes and torso upright.
Hmm.
Um, and utilize it that way in the same way that you might do, a jerk complex that I often do is, a split jerk to a press, holding the split, doing a press and split, doing a power jerk in the split, and then recovering and doing another split jerk. You can
Hmm.
just throw a pause into something
Hmm.
like that on the split jerk on the front or the back end.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Again,
it,
everything's a tool. Like you said,
yeah.
it's all trial and error. So
um, can I break for about 2 minutes? I'm going to pour myself a cup of coffee
yeah, I
and
actually I actually have to have hop off. So I think it's a good time
oh,
to
that
kind of
works.
finish up here. So well,
Yeah,
man, it was a pleasure chatting
this was
with you
fun.
again. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wanna go
Always
ahead.
look forward to when you shoot me a message about hopping on and chatting. So
Yeah, absolutely. Always a pleasure, man. It's been a minute. I want to bring it back and start to do this more consistently. So I'm sure I will be hitting you up again soon.
please do, please do. I will definitely make it a regular thing. Am I seeing you at Nationals this year? Will you be at Nationals week?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't have any athletes. Well, I may have. Is Masters Nationals at
Masters Nationals is
Mas
happening next week.
yeah, Masters Nationals have no. I've got some Masters going to finals.
Okay. Yep.
But not senior nationals. I was like going into the AO, um, lists are feeling really good, and I was like, if I can do like a 280 total at the AO, then like I will consider just fucking sending it for like a few months and like trying to hit that nationals
That's
qualification total, and of course it just like it fell apart. It was really bad.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, I hated that you had a tough day there. I was really looking forward to you having a good day, and not that I would have been able to watch because I was so busy that weekend hopping platform to platform for all the athletes. But
mhm.
I was really rooting for you to have a good day. That's the one thing I never got to do was to do senior nationals.
Mm.
Qualified for everything else, did everything else
Yep.
on the national circuit at least. Never. I got within a kilo. No, I got within 6 kilos two times
Hmm.
of the total, which is fucking brutal.
Yeah. Dude,
That's
I've been frustratingly close for a long time. They keep bumping up the fucking totals.
yep.
And I'm like, fuck.
You you want to
So
hear something that's really gonna hurt you?
uh
It's really gonna hurt. So they dropped the totals. They like took the bottom out of the totals in 2015.
uh
Um, and then they spiked everything again. And I don't know why they did this, but like the totals went from I think it was 285 for 94s in
hmm
2014,
It
something like
was
that.
285
Yeah.
for
And it went down
94s.
to 280 for 2015. So the total for 2015 Nationals was 280. The total for 2015 AO Finals, take a guess.
For finals, 265.
Or it was before it was finals. It was just American Open. It was before they did the series. But yeah, it was 260
260. Okay. Yeah.
flat. So that was the American Open in Reno, December of 2015, with like 978 lifters.
Hmm.
It was fucking wild. Um, and that was my first national meet.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, I got when they so they did it. They dropped it to 280 for 2015. Right? They had the nationals, and they had way too fucking many people at nationals. They were like, "Oh, we fucked up. We
Hmm.
weren't ready." so I was like, cool. And I did another meet after, like a month after nationals, thinking that was going to be, you know, 280 ish again. And I don't know, I did a 280 something. Um,
Mm.
and then they sent it out like, all right, qualifying totals for 2016 nationals, 94 kilo class, 295. I was like, you dirty fuckers, you evil dirty fucker. I was
Yeah.
so mad. And I had to go when I went to Reno, I had to go full send. And I had a great I went 3 for 3 on snatch.
Mm.
And that was I did a 132 in Reno on snatch. To this day is my
Damn.
favorite lift I've ever done. Was a 132 split snatch in Reno where there may or may not have been a knee touch. We don't know.
Mm.
The
Mm.
white lights say there wasn't. Camera might film instant replay may say something else.
Hey man, there's no reason to bring that up. Come on.
Um, and but I had to do a 132, so I had to do a 163, which would have been this was after my fourth. This was a year after my fourth shoulder surgery,
Mm.
and that would have been uh 8 kilos or 7 kilos over the best clean and jerk that
Mm.
I had hit coming back from surgery, and 3 kilos over like my best all time clean and jerk.
Mm.
And I missed my opening clean and jerk, which I had never to that point I had never done in my life.
Mm.
I missed 157 on my opener, chucked it forward, came back, hit it, and just went all in on 163, and it just wasn't there. But that
Mm.
was as I've gotten close one other time. Um, I did a 289 there, so it was 6 kilos away, and then they bumped it again the following year, like the assholes they are, to 300.
Mm.
I was like, you fucking dicks. Uh, and I did a 294. So once again, got within 6 kilos.
Mm.
Um, and that was it. I've never broken 290 again.
I mean, it's getting so wildly competitive. When you've got over 20 guys in the 89 class nationally that are totaling over 300,
Yeah,
it's like, you can't set the total at like 280 and then just have like fucking 50 people show up to
no,
nationals.
it's
So,
it is wildly competitive in a good way. Like I get mad about it because like I never got my shot, but like I also in order to go, you've got to earn the slot, you know?
yeah,
And I never was able to earn the slot, which that's on me, not on you saw to set the total at an
right,
attainable rate. You know, it's
right.
on me to rise to the challenge that's presented. And I just wasn't able to do it. So that's like the one regret that I have from my weightlifting career. I have considered going full dirty and just being like, I'm gonna juice to the gills
Ian
and
Wilson,
fail a drug test. I
Ian
wasn't gonna
Wilson
say the
style.
name, but that's exactly who I was thinking of. Is I'm gonna do a full Ian Wilson and get dirty as hell.
I don't think he
And
cares. I think he was almost just like trying to prove a point, right?
yeah,
Like, fuck
he
it.
was trying to prove a point, and that's on him.
Yeah.
But like I've considered that a couple of times just to see if I can get there, and I'm like, no, it defeats the integrity of the sport, and I want to be a good example for my athletes.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, good times.
Yeah.
All
All right,
right, man.
man. Well, it's been great chatting. Have a great rest of your day.
Same to you.
We'll be in touch.
Yes, sir.